EPR has to be well designed for it to really take effect, but we know that it's not going to cut it by itself. We know this has to be part of a bigger circular economy. So this is a question for Sara, you can start, but for everyone really, then what else do we need for a circular economy for packaging?
I'm happy to start, but I'm sure everyone else has a lot to say on this one for sure. But I mean, EPR traditionally focuses quite downstream on how we collect and actually get the packaging back. We need to make sure that we have the upstream component with us as well. So really focusing on eliminating the packaging we don't need, designing the packaging in a way that it can be circulated. And of course, also switching to new delivery models like reuse, for example, that design out waste in the first place. So that's the one thing that we really need. But then also in the paper that we launched today, we also make it very clear that actually EPR is one policy tool, right? But in order to enable a circular economy, you need to have a comprehensive circular economy approach. And there we actually use our universal circular economy policy goals, which is a framework that has been developed by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to help set out such a comprehensive strategy overall. So we actually use that to take a deep dive into packaging and also go into what are some of the other complementary policies that can also enable a circular economy overall. And then finally, we of course need more businesses to come on board, more voluntary initiatives, and so much more.
Matt, would you like to add your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we've learned on our journey as Unilever is, there's absolutely no silver bullet. You've got a suite of solutions that are required based on, innovation, collaboration, and execution. Because at the end of the day, we have commitments. We've made, stretching commitments in 2017 and 2019. But actually, what everyone wants to see is real progress, tangible progress. What packaging is changing on shelf. I think the first kind of challenge is kind of considering how do we actually reduce the amount of packaging, the plastic packaging we use in the first instance. So we have a commitment to remove, more than 100,000 tons of plastic packaging. And that's by leveraging new business models like reuse and refill that Sara mentioned. Actually in Chile, where Guillermo is, we've worked with an organization there called El Gramo, which is a community-based refill system with kind of smart bottles. And it's based on an app, and people basically can order on their phones. But what we're seeing is, like a 60% repeat rate. So actually it's doing quite well. And if you tailor the responses, you're able to find solutions to be able to take packaging waste out and actually create new ways of engaging with our consumers, which is fantastic. I think in addition to that, it's making sure that the packaging we do use that actually has a value and can be recycled. This was the upstream part that Sara was just mentioning, and that is reliant on technology and new solutions. So toothpaste tubes have obviously, always been quite difficult to recycle. There's kind of, multiple layers to them. And actually what we've seen is, a massive shift. And we recently announced something ourselves around kind of recyclable toothpaste tubes, where you actually go to kind of a single type of plastic, and that makes it easier to recycle. And then finally, it is about getting that collection and processing right. The role that EPR plays is absolutely paramount to that. And I did talk about, we want to use high levels of recycled plastic. That's absolutely, kind of like the foundation, I think, in terms of kind of where we want to be. And so actually unlocking, as I said, the quality, the availability, but also making sure that we can do that at the scale that we need to, for an organization of our size is paramount. And then the only other thing, I'd completely agree with what Sara said about complementary policy tools. What we need to look at are kind of actually what are the things we need to create some of these broader shifts. So we've mentioned new business models like reuse and refill. There's a huge debate to have there going forward in terms of actually how do we make sure that we normalize those kind of systems, actually kind of how do we change behavior. So is it actually, we need to set, specific targets on those new business models, or are there incentives that we need to help with their development? That's kind of, hugely exciting stuff. And so what we need to think about is, Sara said, not just the downstream, but the upstream at the same time.
Who'd like to jump in next? Maarten, perhaps. Guillermo, please.
Sure. So I think that I just want to say one thing about EPR still, which is that something that Matt said in his previous intervention, that EPR does have some tools to affect what's happening upstream. So we have been looking at state-of-the-art kind of tools like eco-modulated fees, which means that packages that are difficult to recycle will pay more than those that are easy to recycle, right? And we introduce that in our regulation. That's something that's like sort of like the, in the 2.0 sort of EPR schemes for packaging, and we decided to introduce them straight away. So we sort of like leapfrogged on that issue. And we also introduced something that's quite novel. It's an incentive for companies that can reduce packaging. And I won't go into the details, but it does have some that we do tell companies, if you reduce packaging, unfortunately, you're gonna pay less because you pay per ton, right? But this is an additional incentive in order to you to go further, you know. And in that sense, you can introduce some devices within EPR regulation to also generate some incentives upstream. But of course, it's not enough. There's so many other things we need to do. Again, what Matt said, you know, there's no silver bullet here. This is a systems transformation. Nobody said the systems transformation can be tackled by one single instrument. We need to move in parallel with many other things, and that's what we're saying in this circular economy roadmap.